Hello, my name is Spencer Ham. I want you guys to do something for me. I want you to name 5 African Americans before the year 1950. Well, you may be wondering to yourselves why I'm asking you something that seems so easy. But my history teacher, Mr. McCrisky, asked my coloring art past class this question on the first day of school this year. And I thought to myself at first, who can name the most? Can anyone get 10? How many can I do? Well, staring at the paper in front of me, I realized only 2 people came to mind. And I was overcome with a feeling of embarrassment. So I hid my paper from the rest of my class. And when Mr. McCrisky called out to the class, I realized the most anyone could name was 3. So I decided to do better, not just for myself, not just for my class, but for everyone this video will reach. I decided to research African Americans before the year 1950, specifically war heroes. To start off, the birth of America, the Revolutionary War, where Africans were torn away from their homes and families, put on ships to be slaves in a new country that they had no idea about. Yet, even so, they fought for this country in the militia and the Continental Army. And one man I wanted to highlight is Agrippa Hole. Agrippa Hole is actually from right above us in the Berkshires of Massachusetts. And he's famous for serving famous people. The first person is Andrew Kosciuszko, who he served for several years. And Andrew Kosciuszko was a Polish military officer. And he also fought for the Americans in the Revolution. The other man he served after several years with Kosciuszko was General Benedict Arnold, who he fell under command with in the middle of the American Revolution. And General Benedict Arnold thought it was in the best of his interest to defect to the British side because he thought there was little to no hope for America in this war. So Agrippa Hole, after seeing the man who commanded him leave his side, his country, probably could have done the same. He could have left the country that forced him into it to work for them. But instead, he decided to fight for this country, to fight for the independence of a country he wasn't even familiar with. And that's amazing. Then, on to the Civil War, where 90% of black men of age fought because they wanted to fight. They wanted to be free, and this was the war for their freedom. A group I wanted to highlight is the Massachusetts 54th, who was so famous they had a movie about them called Glory. They're actually right above us too, in the Berkshires of Massachusetts. And they are actually the first black unit in the U.S. Armed Forces ever. After the Civil War, a lot of people thought that it would be different because that was really the war for African American freedom. But it wasn't. It was still terrible. And in World War I, black people were treated wrongly, especially by the higher officials who gave them non-combat roles. However, a man, Alfred Persip, who's also right above us in the Berkshires of Massachusetts, fought in this war in a regiment that I want to talk about, the 372nd. This regiment was looked at as not much benefit for America, so they were donated to France and thrown on the front lines of the Meuse-Argonne offensive, which was one of the battles that decided the outcome of World War I. And they fought so well on the front lines that they received the Croix de Guerre, which is the highest unit decoration given by France. These men were true heroes. Another man who had a big effort in World War I for African Americans was Joel Spingarn. Joel Spingarn had a heavy influence to military officials and government officials on implementing black officers into the war because we had several thousands of black soldiers in the war, but barely any black officers to lead them. Then, on to World War II, the war where enough was enough. All of this had to stop. At the start of the war, the Army War College report which was looked at as a very trustful source, published this. And it said that black men were unfit for combat and could not serve in the line of duty. So, black men did not get the roles that they wanted in this war either. But one group who proved everyone wrong is the Tuskegee Airmen, the Red Tails, who everyone is familiar with. Because these men were really what proved that enough was enough. They fought so well, even though they said they couldn't even fight, that they received 3 Distinguished Unit Citations, 744 Air Medals, 96 Flying Crosses, and 60 Purple Hearts. Enough was enough. On July 26, 1948, President Truman issued Executive Order 9981, which said that segregation had to be wiped out in the armed forces and that we had to be equal. So, the very next war, 4 years later, in 1952, is the Korean War, the first war without segregation. But did it really work? Not really. There were still a lot of all-black and all-white units, and 90% of black units had a white commander. Conditions sucked, and black soldiers felt that they were still not equal. One man I want to highlight from this war, from Bridgeport, Connecticut, is Lawrence Joel, whose unit fought so well they received a Presidential Unit Citation of Korea. And this man felt that service was his life after this, and served for 25 years, all the way through the Vietnam War. And he was a medic in the Vietnam War who happened to save 12 men in one battle with 2 bullet wounds. And that was so amazing that it had to be recognized, and he was given a Medal of Honor by the President of the United States. I'd like to thank you all for listening, and I'd like to say one more thing. These black men suffered racism, scrutiny, felt they weren't welcomed in the country they were in, and still fought and were heroes. A lot of people just fought, did great things on the battlefield, and were heroes, but they didn't go through what black people went through. They weren't told that they didn't belong here. They weren't lynched or treated wrongly or said that they can't enter certain places. And then black soldiers, after going through all that, still fought for that country and fought so well that they were heroes. And this needs to be recognized. Thank you.